doing this?
We're doing this, man. There you go.
Coffee time with Coach Christian, and
Coach Brik. How you doing, bro?
good.
Yeah.
It's been eventful.
I'm doing iced coffee today.
Yeah. With some stuff in it.
With lots of stuff in it, yeah.
Got some First Form in here.
Delish. Protein, 40 grams. It's crazy.
Solid.
So, a lot going on. A lot been happening. We haven't had a podcast in a hot second. We were out at Death Race a couple weeks now.
We did try to record a podcast about it. It just didn't work out.
Technical difficulties at the utmost, definitely.
Round 2.
So here we are. We wanted to record it nice and fresh when everything was still pumping and I was still electric from the journey. I am still charged from it.
I'm still charged.
In question. I think about it
100%.
so often. And it's been cool too because one of the things that happened is you new network of people and all of them are very active on social media.
Yeah.
So then I feel like I keep touching base with these people and keeping tabs on them and realizing that every single one of them is a mover and a shaker.
The
They're all doing
camaraderie
things.
also is even one notch up from like the Spartan Race.
Oh yeah.
Or like what you find at a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
Like the camaraderie we have with these people.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even on the same side y'all were on, right?
Yeah.
Like I was in the opposite side, and still, I feel like I developed camaraderie with all of those
absolutely.
people
Mutual respect.
on a super deep level.
It's like the circle within the circle, right?
Yeah.
It's like you keep getting a little bit more of an inner ring because it's like the niche market of a niche market, or a niche, not market, but a niche thing. You know, like you're into Spartan racing, it's obstacle course racing already, and then now you're into endurance racing and rucking, and then it just starts all like melding and that was
Yeah, because
really
there's
cool.
no Spartan Race aspect of this.
No, there really wasn't.
Even though like the hat says Spartan Death Race.
Yeah, got my shirt.
Uh,
Proudly wearing it.
there's no obstacle aspect to it.
Mm-mm.
It is more like adventure racing, just compartmentalized a little bit into like a 3-day thing.
And
More accessible
rocking.
because it doesn't cost like, $20,000
Yeah, exactly.
or $50,000
And-
entry fee.
And it's and they keep it within that 3-day time frame, at least with this particular race, because I know some other stuff out there.
Yeah, it is. I would say, it is actually hardcore.
It's unquestionably one of the hardest things I've done in my life.
Like, we've seen people drop out of like a Spartan Ultra,
yeah,
which is like just a fucking cakewalk compared to this thing.
yeah, because I mean it's different. I mean, there's definitely a lot of pushing of the envelope that gets put into this, and I think it's not only the physical, but then the mental, and then the spirit dynamic, and then some amount of skill set too. Skill sets that you wouldn't necessarily need in a Spartan race.
Yeah.
Like you're not chopping wood in a Spartan race. Right? Being able to do that in a proficient manner.
The cognitive things, there have been Spartan races that used to have like cognitive challenges.
That
You'd
would
have
be
to memorization challenges. So there was that aspect, right? There was like
great,
the
yeah.
the cognitive aspect of the race at the end.
Well, and even
When
prior
those guys
though,
were
because
broken.
even having to memorize,
the
no quarter,
yeah.
and then having to memorize the elephant song, and then, having to be able to do the origami. I mean, I didn't end up getting this part, so I was just watching everybody else kind of do it. I ended up being really lucky because I was able to participate. Got in pretty far from my own show. I was shooting for 24 hours, and I was just shy of that, so I was happy with that. And then I was able to stay on. Just the way it worked out, to be able to help out and volunteer, and being able to back these guys up and girl, and seeing where they're going through, and just being just present was empowering in itself. Watching people go through their processes is pretty intense, because right from the get-go, right when you get there and you're just like in line, and you're especially for me, because I did everything so haphazardly, which was lesson 1, right?
You're instantly under assault.
Instant. Well, I mean, I think our journey started off with the scavenger hunt, which was so much fun. Definitely not to be repeated, because it was unnecessarily stressful, and my focus was shifted on finding these items that I should have found weeks before. But we decided to jump on the death race. I decided to jump on the death race very last minute. I was able to get it worked out because of the ultra thing. I wasn't sure that was going to be accepted, but thank you, Andy. Appreciate that, and appreciate you watching the podcast. That was really cool too.
Next time, Andy will make it shorter, so you don't have to sit through 50 minutes of us.
Yeah, unless you want to, of course. Hopefully, we're entertaining enough, and we are talking about things that relate to you. That started off the journey with the scavenger hunt, getting up there, and then we flew into Philadelphia to drive up to Vermont because that's just the way it worked out, and it was a fun journey, but it definitely felt like from the moment we hit the airport, it was on, right? It was the race began.
We financially, the cheapest thing was to fly to Philly, and that was the cheapest place to rent a car. So that is why we flew. That is why we landed 6 hours away from where we were going.
The way it all lined up.
We were trying to go there in the truck. That didn't work out. Weeks later, we still have no truck. So it's a good thing. Good thing we didn't hold our breath.
Not happened. Yeah.
The transfer case is set up. The brakes are done. All the fluids are dialed, and the transmission that had just been replaced a year ago has some issue. We went back to the transmission shop on Monday. It has since gone out of business. So hoorah!
Oh, I didn't know that.
But one thing after another is just it's how do we keep moving forward. So we went the financially best way to get there, but I think actually that made it awesome.
It worked out great for us because we were able to
the road trip aspect and making the road trip a scavenger hunt, meeting up with old friends.
And by the way, I can honestly tell you that turkey eggs are very hard to find out of season.
Yes.
Yeah, there's some very interesting things, and it's amazing because you get that gearless, and you're just like, what the fuck?
And here's what else we can tell you.
And that and this.
You can find fish scales early in the morning at a fish market. But if you call them at 4 p.m., most of them have already thrown out all those fish scales.
In which case, they might be able to go in the trash and pull some fish scales out for you.
Which is what they did.
Very confused by this. The girl she asked me 4 times in Spanish, and then we did it in English and Spanish because she just was like, fish scales, right? But anyway, I digress from that. Speaking of fish scales, though, one of the contestants, I didn't see this, brought the fish scales to a fish song, which I thought was very ingenious.
Scales to a fish song. I think Florida girl brought plastic, pool fishes.
Uh-huh.
And we know that that bunny had an actual fish scale, which saved the day for him specifically.
Yeah, which specifically was told not to bring that, but it did change the game for him. Yeah, I mean, look, it was just so much. I mean, we could spend hours talking about how things transpired and transformed and went about, and the relationships. For me, the whole experience became very spiritual. Became very ceremonial, and that's the first thing I noticed with this common thread with everyone that's there. There's a certain vibe of being connected to your environment, right? And your environment being nature, not your environment being here in the middle of the city, but subsequently that too, but more so being connected with that. I felt there was that moment that people were just climbing up, and they would get up to the top of the hill, and it's you're looking up, and you're being pushed to the point of completely being uncomfortable and breaking, because that's the whole idea. The whole point is to, they want to break you down. It's last man standing. Ultimately, right?
Ultimately, I remember reading a Viktor Frankl book, and he's talking about finding comfort. Obviously, this gentleman was a Holocaust survivor, so he's talking about finding comfort in the most uncomfortable thought process we could ever even come across, right? We hope something like that never happens again, although crazy things are happening in the world right now. But my point is, I was thinking about that when I had just fallen asleep on the floor by the fire. The first couple of days I was there, I was like, man, this sleeping pad sucks.
Remember you talking about
it. But then, the last day we were there, I was just sleeping in the dirt with no tent, with no sleeping pad, just next to the fire, curled up, and I was so just under the stars,
so comfortable as
in my 1,000,000-star hotel, and as comfortable as could be. That perspective change of now finding comfort had a slightly different meaning. Now finding comfort was just being close enough to the fire to where it wasn't cold. The mountain is as rugged as it is. We found that little nook You know, that was like our little comfort
made
zone.
that happen. That's amazing. You know, I want to, while we're talking about the race, give shout out to the 3 gentlemen that managed to make it to the end, because it was epic.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, Nate, our Scott, and Tony, our Austrian.
Australopithecus. So how we knew these guys was Bunny or Rabbit, or Winter Warrior. He had the most of the names.
Yeah. He did. He had quite the collection.
Tony was Australopithecus because he's from Austria. I had my money on him right from the onset.
You said that early on.
From as soon as it started, I was like, this guy's going all the way to the end. And then free guy, Scott,
yeah, that's all for it.
You know,
and I mean, I gotta mention Ivan, because he was right there at the end.
Yeah.
You know, our bro from our bro from LA, Ivan, just
spicy beans.
Spicy beans is what he got. He had rolled his ankle, and he was just, he was like the last one that got whittled out right before the end, and it was just epic watching these guys battle it at that point.
And it was epic that as long as this thing is 70 plus hours, it came down to the very end, even where we were at a lookout, not the very last mission, but maybe like third from the last thing that they did was them coming to our checkpoint where we had camped out and made our comfort zone by the fire.
Miguel's cabin.
Yeah. So, you know, just from that point, that deep into the race, there were several lead changes that deep into the race. Yeah. And long lead changes, like hour gaps between first place and second place, that deep into the race. That part was crazy.
Amazing.
Game-changing turn of events that you're like, oh my God.
Ivan had a full lap lead, and got lost in the woods.
A full lap lead.
Full lap. He should have finished the race.
He looked so fresh.
He looked amazing when he showed up. And then, you know, amazing moments, you know, you're sitting there and you're talking about the scale and how that worked out. It's like watching these guys have to bring up these buckets mile down the trail filled up with rocks, 40 pounds. And being able to judge what 40 pounds is at that point. And for every pound that they were off, it was burpees.
How many?
It ended up being
50
burpees for each pound.
Every pound
that's
they were
what
off.
It was, yeah. And they got, they were short.
So they were two of them.
Except one. And that's where the lead changed, right?
Yeah, so two of these guys were short 5 whole pounds. And Ivan was short 3 pounds. So it was 150 burpees. But then Rabbit shows up over the weight limit. I almost felt like we should have done some burpees for him.
Yeah,
so far over the weight limit.
I think it was a solid almost 5 pounds, right?
Yeah, it was
44,
5. Yeah, he was 45 pounds.
He made sure not to be short.
And he dropped off his rocks and he overtook the lead.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's just, and then at that point you're heading back and you got to be able to navigate yourself in the woods. It's dark. It's pitch black. It's 3 a.m.
These guys get lost.
There's 60
it's dark.
hours,
It's pitch black. It's 3 a.m. for me, and I've had a nap. These guys have not slept for several days.
Yeah,
right?
They're at that point 55, 60 hours in, solid. So yeah, solid.
Well, in the morning was 72 hours, so they're probably like 65 hours in, 64 hours in.
It's a lot. It's a true test of the mindset and the will and being able to overcome. And then I think what you get out of it is knowing where your threshold is, right? That's the personal journey.
How much can you really endure? Because the reality is, there's a definite physical aspect. Mm-hmm. It was heavy to ruck for me, not having a sandbag, just having my own personal survival stuff and my water and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. The load is definitely a real thing, but it really is the mindset. It really is like being able to stick to the game. When we think about free guy, Scott, that goes all the way to the end, if you remember during the 24 hours, the last day of this event, the last full day before the night comes of the event is 24 hours of Mount Sparta, right? Is that how it goes?
Yeah. 24 hours of Mount Sparta. Yeah. So I think it's roughly a mile up, roughly a mile back down from
we were at the top hanging out and make sure everybody was doing their thing and everybody was safe, obviously, because there's not like a humongous crew like at a Spartan race or like a marathon.
It feels very underground. It feels very
underground.
Very underground.
It's a fight club. It's the
Yeah,
inner
it
circle.
just adds to the mystique even further because
It does.
because it makes it so real, right?
Yeah.
Because you're in the woods lost, and there's no like you get lost, you're out there for a while. That's why we have whistles, and it's Vermont. There's bears.
There is.
I mean, just reality.
Every time we saw Free Guy get to the top though,
Mm-hmm.
he was just smiling. Like his attitude was great. That attitude really, I think, was the difference between the first 4 dudes. Those first four guys,
Mm-hmm.
they were smiling a lot.
Right.
They were smiling
particularly
as much as it was hurting.
Mm-hmm. Even if Australopithecus' smile looked a little sinister at times.
Yes, Tony.
It looked a little bit like I don't know.
Like
that
the
guy's
Joker?
really smiling. Yeah, in that direction. Yeah, man. I also want to go. It made me think of Dom because Dom was like the one like really calling him out on that, and Matthew and Peter and
Norm.
Norm. I mean, these guys that were really making this happen. Epic. I mean, all these individuals. Like, I have so much respect for them,
and Sean,
and Andy and Sean completely,
and Rob
completely.
Yeah.
Just and the crew was there, and then Clay. And
the medical crew, yeah.
The
Clay
EMTs were phenomenal.
And the EMTs were phenomenal. Like,
phenomenal.
really
Because
good.
they had to hike with us, when we went
really
on that,
good set of characters.
It was like very, very, as much as it was underground and by the seat of your pants, you felt like, there was a structure there. There was something like, that you could feel comfortable and do what you needed to do. And, even though it's real. I mean, you fall,
Yeah,
it's the
real.
water. It's like, there's nothing. There's no smoke and mirrors with this, and that was really tough.
Yeah, you can fake your way through a Spartan race.
Yeah.
You can fail the obstacles, not do burpees, skirt around some stuff, cut through some woods.
Get that medal, get the shirt. Feel
You
good
know what I'm
about
saying?
it. However it is.
You can medal Monday something you didn't finish.
Yeah.
You can't bullshit Death Race.
No.
None.
If you
Even
got-
getting to the fucking registration was like a hurricane heat just to get to the registration.
It was a hurricane heat. And for me, I've never done a hurricane heat, right? On top of that, that's why it's insane. Think about how much I just threw myself into the mix of making this happen. Because, we had all these like prerequisites, and I was able to have something come together, which you obviously guys know, which is Sundance and my journey, all of that stuff. But to be in that line and to see it all come together, and then to look, and I was towards the back of the line because I got there late because I had to wait for my ice blocks to come out of the freezer, and the person that was going to open up the freezer at the hotel got there like 30 minutes late. So, a group of us got there late, which added a lot to that pressure of getting there. And then at the very end, there was Abby, who is like 5'1" at the most,
100 pounds at the most,
probably 95 pounds. And I believe she's from Taiwan, and she goes to get up with her pack, and it was just like out of a movie. She just like fell back completely, like a turtle,
upside down turtle,
like on her back. And then at that point, it's like blood in the water, because as soon as Don saw that, and it was like a scene out of like a boot camp, like a Vietnam. Like first week in boot camp, and you're just getting
slash stripes.
Yeah, slash stripes. Yeah, completely. You're getting with Francis included. We had our own Francis, which it was not lost on me the power of his name, and that was just ended up being
100% Francis.
100%. Every time, as soon as he came up, and Francis, he had his own purpose of being there, and he added a lot to the beginning of this.
We won't bring up his
hurricane.
purpose, so we don't.
Exactly. And in the beginning, it added a lot to that. The hurricane
100%, 100%.
Because you're like trying to figure out your stuff, you're getting yelled at, and Don from the beginning he's like, "Why are you here? Just go home. Be smart the whole time.
Be smart."
And there's a part of you that's inside your mind as you're like sitting there, and they're just like, if you let that little crack come up of like, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe what am I doing here? You have all the summer camp was there.
That idea is a slippery slope.
Oh, it'll crack.
The
you
people
wide
who were on the mindset of they were going to go forever went really far, and the people who were mouthing things like, "Oh, this is hard," they didn't make it.
No, you start manifesting that reality.
Manifesting quindaries.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
Some people found their way through, and some people were desperately looking for a way out.
And
in fact, how you got in the truck was an opportunity through, and 4 other people had that opportunity. They got past me and did not get in the truck. And let me digress real quick. We're talking about this chick being a turtle. Her pack was 91 pounds. She weighs 100. That's how hardcore Abby is, and she got far.
Yeah, I mean they were able to tweak out her pack, and then they actually through the berating that she was receiving, they were actually able to guide her to have her make better decisions about what she was carrying. Because at the end of the day, she still had to make the decisions. She had to pull the things out. It's not like no one's holding your hand here at any point. At best, you're gonna get maybe nudged in a direction. They might drop some words of wisdom that may go over your head because it'll be out of context. So you think until you see it in hindsight, and that kind of thing's going around. That's why, giving props to those individuals and the experience and how they were able to just, really navigate and guide that journey, Yeah. Like we were out on that trek on the hike when I did get out there, and to hear Norm and Matt just cackling the whole time, like the amount of joy they were having. And I was beginning to cramp out real bad. My quads were just beginning to shake and the whole thing. And it was such a juxtaposition in my mind of these guys that are just like floating right now, going straight up.
Dude, it puts in perspective. Like, these guys are hardcore motherfuckers.
Hardcore, man. I'm telling you, it's like, it's a 22-mile hike, and I'm Floridian. I'm from Chicago too, because that's flat as well. So Chicago, Florida, Brazil a little bit. But those guys weren't ahead of me. They guys were ahead of me, like there. Like, it was just like the trail just felt like it was just kept going straight up, and it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. It got eventually to 2 or 3 in the morning, and that
3:37 they pulled you off.
Yeah, when they finally got it, and luckily we had still when the EMT decided to pull me and tell me I couldn't go any further. I still had to hike to get to the gate. So it wasn't like, okay, great, and all of a sudden someone carries out. That's what we're saying. It's not like a Spartan race where they're just calling somebody.
They're
they
not
called
picking you
somebody.
up in a gator, man.
No, you're hiking out to one of the exits, and
yeah.
That's ended up being what I ended up doing. But interesting enough, because what I learned in my own journey with that was I was calorie deficient and I didn't have enough salt intake, and that's where the cramping. I started cramping earlier in the day going up. In hindsight, I missed that because I cramped.
And what's crazy is, it's not like we weren't prepared. Like we have talked sufficiently. We stopped and bought nutrition and salt and 4 different times.
It wasn't sufficient for what I needed, and that was what I was learning on the fly too. It's like we're all burning differently, and that all that adrenaline and probably the days leading into it too. I probably went into that a little more dehydrated than I had realized. Even going into to the race from all the run around and getting off an airplane and all that stuff.
Being dehydrated was crazy, because that one day I was 6 liters into drinking water, and my urine was not clear, and I'm like, fuck, like I'm 1.5 gallons into this shit already.
And it's like it's about halfway through the day at that point, maybe a little bit more, but
yeah, that was like 2 gallon plus
and you were
water
racing.
a day, and I wasn't racing.
You were
walking around with a backpack,
keeping up with everybody. Yeah, I mean, once the EMTs kept feeding me stuff, and there were some other products that were given to me. I actually have their names. I should give them a little plug out, because I really felt some of that stuff worked immediately. By the time I got to the top, I was beginning to feel human again. At one point when he was checking on me, he was like checking my pulse, and he's like, "Oh, your pulse, how you feeling?" I'm like, "Whoa, I'm a little lightheaded." And I'm I'm beginning to do this a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, you're cold and clammy," and I'm like, "Oh fuck, I am cold and clammy." I was like, start checking in with yourself, because they had to move as slow as I could move, and every time I stopped, the entire crew would stop, because we had to keep it together. So the responsibility and the pressure of having all of these, these people that I knew wanted to go and could go, being held back by me was very, very upsetting to me and incredibly humbling. It's like I'm literally like dropping to my knees when I would stop.
Yeah, and me being on the other side, and then hearing all these other people's perspective, nobody was upset with you.
And they showed, and nobody was upset at the moment either, because what I even brought it up, the reason I bring it up was the amount of support that these guys were giving.
It really is like
and girl. I mean, everybody. It was just like, all right, one step in front of the other, and then it was just like they come up and they give me all different quotes, and each person would like trade out and just kind of just encourage me to keep doing it. And at some point, of course, Norm's hopping around, literally hopping. he looks over, he passes by, and he comes back, ooh, and he looks down, and there's like a little step into the creek, and he's like, oh, this looks cool, and he just like goes in, he's like, everybody in the creek, and I'm just like, oh man, no. And it's like, you know, it's Vermont, it's the middle of the night, the water is legitimately cold. It is freaking cold. I don't know how cold it is. It felt definitely in the 50s. I can't imagine it wouldn't be.
The outside
it's
air
coming from the top.
was 50.
So
right?
The water is coming up from the top of Bloodroot.
Yeah.
And it's coming down, and now we're hiking through the river, and it's like it's a creek. You know, there's rocks everywhere. And if I was having problems on the regular solid road here, I was eating it like every couple of steps. Buckets going flying, and I'm just like, water's hitting me, and then we finally get to a point, and then it's just like, all right, everyone put their stuff down, and then he wants us to create a dam with our bodies to cover up a rock that's in the middle of this little area. And we're all like side by side, and we're sitting there, and it's just not working.
Not gonna work.
And then finally someone just like lays down, and then everybody just like lays down, and we pull off the objective that he wanted. And I'm out of the water now. I'm just like,
yeah.
And then Matt's like, the only thing that's gonna warm me up is to move, and I'm just like, all right, yeah. There's nothing you can do. What are you gonna do? Oh, hit the ground, start crying? No, it's just you got to dig in, and you got to do it.
Deep.
You got to dig in. And that was to me like, it was incredibly humbling. And like I said, I've done some challenging things, and what I discovered from my personal journey was, you know, people talk when I say that, especially people on a spiritual path with me, they're like, I'm like, harder than Sundance, and I'm like, it's different because Sundance, you're in this spiritual realm, so you're vibrating at this kind of realm, right? And you're not carrying anything physical, you know, because it's all spiritual. You're carrying a ton of stuff emotionally, spiritually, potentially, but you're not carrying the physical. Where all of this was in the physical realm, right?
Hardcore
Everything was in the physical. It was the cold water. It was the carrying of the weight. It was the dehydration. It was just the on and on and on and on, relentless pounding and pounding and pounding. And like I said, I only made it 20 hours in.
Yeah, and while, you know, Brik made it to the truck, as we had mentioned earlier, so while he went on this adventure that he's talking about up Bloodroot with those gentlemen, I was on the other side, and now we had 4 people that chose not to get in the truck. They had gotten to a point where they could have gotten in, chose not to, and then we have about 15 other people coming down the mountain that didn't make it. So, and mind you, I don't want this to come across like I'm judging those 4 people that did not get in the truck. I'm trying to put in perspective how hardcore this is. These people had a chance to get in, and they were like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, this is enough. And that's only 20 hours in.
And I think some of the people got into the race, and I had a conversation, and a little bit like me, with like, okay, I kind of doing this because my buddy's doing it, and kind of like, however it was, and not fully understanding the scope of where they got themselves
or they got
into.
Invited,
right?
Like Katie.
Exactly, like Katie, who was just not hasn't even done a Spartan race, to have the foresight and the strength and the will to even show up.
Oh, crazy! I mean, 70 people entered, and 33 people show up. You know, so that tells you right from the beginning. It tells you like, people think this is cool. Oh, I'm gonna sign up for this, and then as it gets real, they're like,
we're talking 300.
It's
like dropping $300 on a race and just not showing up.
Yeah,
it's not like it's
not a smart race. You're not deferring that to somebody else.
Yeah,
like,
it's done.
Over.
Your $300 is done, and you're moving on, and that's what it is. And it was the whole experience was just incredible, incredibly powerful, and I'm so grateful. And as soon as I put my stuff down, as soon as I kind of came back into my body, had like took a couple hours of sleep, like 2-3 hours, got up and felt amazing. It's amazing what you can do in 2-3 hours of sleep, right? Amazing. I mean, and just already in my mind, I'm like, all right, planning next year, all right? Like my checklist, that's a learning lesson. That's a learning. And
100%.
And then learning about myself, right? Learning about those moments of where you digging in, right? Because we're getting relentlessly bombarded by our lives. Some of us more than others, and in different ways, and we have been, and we're going through, and it's just like, it's like that waves of life, right? I always relate to
ebbs and flows.
I relate to it to surfing. Sometimes it's like you're in the middle of the storm, sometimes it's flat, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're under, sometimes you're getting beat up by waves, and sometimes you're just enjoying a beautiful sunset on your board. I don't surf. I just surf life. and then I see it, and I love watching it, and I have such mad respect for that, and I get it, because I feel like that's what we're doing, and so much of it, going back to what we talked about, the three bros and a couple of other ones, in particular those three, was the attitude, right? Always.
That was the constant with them, was the attitude.
Good. Things are good. We're moving forward. Yeah, smile, crack a joke, move on. So it's like, it's the inner dialogue that is so powerful. It's such a powerful element to our existence, and it can be so empowering, and it can be so disempowering.
You tell yourself a story, and that story becomes a reality. Whether that story was, I'm going to keep moving forward, or that story was, I'm going to look for a way out, Yeah. And a powerful moment for me was when you guys got in that truck, and then Joe was like, "Hey, let's give these guys their bibs back." So a bunch of people did not make the cutoff. Some people didn't make the cutoff, but still were able to get in the truck. And other people, they had to give up their jersey at that point. Now, we're 20-something hours in, and Joe comes over and he's like, "Hey, let's keep these people in the fight. We're gonna have them do Murph 8 times overnight while these guys are hiking Blood Route, and if they keep their bibs, they'll be more checked in. They'll be in the fight." And we had some words with these guys, got them fired up, and these guys banged out 2,400 air squats, 1,600 push-ups, and 800 burpees instead of the pull-ups. And then 4 times they ran up to Shrek's cabin and back while these guys were out on their excursion. Let me tell you something. Keeping those bibs kept those people in the fight 100%. He was 100% dead on with how it was going to go down. Those people would have gone back to you can't go back to your car, actually. When you're done, you have to sit at medical for 6 hours. But the difference between those people checking out at midnight or whatever time it was, and those people checking out the next day at like noon, was that decision. Empowering.
It was very, very empowering. I would definitely say.
Yeah, it literally, like, a lot of those people, right, missed the cutoff, ended up doing Murph times 8, lost their bibs anyway, because it wasn't up to our side, it wasn't up to the staff if they were going to keep their bibs or not. It was up to the people who got in the truck, who made the time cap, right? Those people voted not to have these people be able to keep their bibs after about 15 hours that they were able to regain their bibs.
Democracy.
It is what it is. It was a vote. And, and still a handful of people, after losing their bib once, after having their bib pulled the second time, did Mount Sparta for 24 hours the next day. That, to me, like, Doral.
Yeah,
Serena.
Nate. Well, Julian,
you know what I'm saying? Like, It was crazy to see how determined those people were. And awesome, because then they got their money's worth. You know what I mean? They were in the fight essentially for the 70 hours anyway, also.
And the next day they were just moving. They were like literally just enjoying themselves. I mean, there was nothing to prove. Nothing at all.
A lot of them dudes were doing Mount Sparta barefoot, just hanging out, feet in the soil, having a good time, Snickers bars, dropping us off goodies at the top of Mount Sparta.
First Snickers bar in, I think, a decade.
Yeah.
It was epic. Man, so it's such a powerful journey, and just thinking about, like I said, man, already thinking about next year and what we're going to do differently and how we're going to approach it, and just really enjoying this newfound appreciation, the community, and appreciation for this dynamic of endurance racing for me personally, because it's a new experience. Now I'm seeing all the rucks, and I'm seeing now I understand a little bit of that subculture, and I'm intrigued. I'm like, on the 24-hour race, the Mount Sparta, the guys that finished, there was I think 3 that did also, but 2 particularly that broke the record 35 times. And the guy right behind him did it 34 times. That's 35 times up and down to Shrek's cabin, which is about a mile up, a mile back down. It's like 800-900 feet of elevation. Both these guys were in their mid-50s.
They're 55.
Yeah,
both of them. They both climbed Everest worth of ascent, correct? Because that was their goal. Their goal was like, we're gonna climb Everest.
Yeah,
and apparently, I saw on a Facebook post later, the guy stopped and had time to go. Like, Jimbo could have done more laps.
Yeah.
That part's crazy. That's crazy that he could have done more laps.
What's insane is that, his wife shows up in the morning with their dog, who apparently is his hiking buddy, and dog's all pumped up, sees dad, and he's like, oh, and he's about to do his last lap, his last ascent and down, and I guess he was averaging about that moment about 40 minutes, give or take, and he busted out one of his fastest laps up and down. I know it's because of the dog, because he was all pumped up, and the dog took off, and dude, it's like the victory lap, right? You know this is the last one. You throw it all down, and he looked great when he finished, man.
He looked great when we were at the general store.
He started in the lead and never let it go. We were like, is this guy gonna keep this up? I mean, because the first lap, I think it was like 28
crazy
minutes
to be able to maintain that, right? Like, it looked nuts. It looked impossible. It actually looked impossible. But not only did he maintain it, he looked so good the next day. And let me retell you right now, this gentleman is 55 years old. I know dudes that are 35 threw in the towel, 45 threw in the towel.
Everybody other than those individuals, they were done. I mean, some cats and 10 times up and down.
Oh, I don't even.
Individuals.
Yeah. I don't even mean at the race. I apologize. I mean, like, I know dudes that are 45 that have just, I'm old.
I got you. Yeah.
You know, I can't run after my kids. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna hatch another kid right now.
That's the way, and keep going
Possibly.
to the end. Yeah.
No one's pregnant.
Add to the reality of life. Like I said, it's surfing. It's surfing with company at this point. So, yeah, I'm really appreciative to Joe and Don for putting that on, and everybody that was involved, and all the new relationships friendships we made. Cliff up in all our 4-wheeler crew, Cliff and Crystal and Serena.
And thank you to Andy for
yes,
for the acceptance.
Yes, and appreciating that. And then showing up at the end too. I know she had a whole journey to getting there because she's on her new career, and she got locked up and held up in, I believe, Portugal.
Something like that.
And then made it happen, and she showed up and surprised everybody, and it was just like, it just, her desire to be there.
Warrior mindset.
You could see
100%.
It was like no way she wasn't going to at least make the effort to be there and greet these individuals that wanted to come and do this. It's such a specific community. Yeah, I mean,
it is.
It's like the ultimate. It's like the aspect of Sufferfest. It's like Sufferfest exponential. It's like some dynamic of it where you're just
And I can't wait till next year.
I'm so excited about it, man.
It's such a weird thing to be excited for.
So excited.
I don't even care if I'm working or participating. I just can't wait to go.
Yeah, the whole experience. Just
kind of on either side. It's not like you're sleeping a lot or
you're in it.
You're in that shit one way or the other.
Yeah, and the place is gorgeous. And then piggyback that with seeing the Spartan Kids Summer Camp come to a close was great. Seeing all these 50 kids out there, 50 kids plus it must have been, all doing Murph every single day, climbing up and down on their hands and knees, working together, and
carrying bags of cement. Those bags of cement are 60 pounds.
And figuring it out. And these kids don't weigh 60 pounds. Some of them, definitely not.
Like understanding teamwork at such a young age to actually do something, actually physically hard. Like
literally physically, really not just hard, but really hard.
Really hard.
Yeah, like really hard. I mean, powerful. And seeing their faces and seeing their excitement too, of like how pumped up they were. And I had like these 2 girls walking me up because when we got there, they had the campers walk us up to the top, and I remember it's like I had the pack and the whole thing, and I'm like, and then the girl's like, oh, we're almost there. I'm like, all right, we're almost there. She's like, we're almost there, the halfway point, and I was like, oh, we're
almost there to the halfway point.
I'm like, I didn't say anything, but inside of my soul just went, because it was already challenging.
These kids are so hardcore, man.
They were, man. Yeah, all of it. And I don't know how many of them started hardcore before the end of the week, but they all got harder from that experience.
All of them.
I mean,
it is brilliant. The kids camp really is brilliant.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that develop and seeing how that plays. Maybe Mini Monkey will be interested in that for next year. We'll see. We'll talk to her. We'll see how that plays out.
told her.
Voluntold you're going to camp. And also I want to get to Jeff too, man. Made me think of Jeff because when I was talking about Spartan camp, and I think I might want to send my daughter, and he looks at me dead in the face, he's like, "Don't you love her?" And I just like, it was so sincere. He was a funny dude, man. And I'm telling you, just like on and on with the people that we met, man. The whole
shout out to Jeff, man.
The whole
and
crew.
anyone we're forgetting, I hope we're
I mean all the
we're
New
definitely
York
gonna be
crew
forgetting some people.
Oh, so many.
But,
there's 33 people, you know. Tamara, you know,
yes.
awesome. Yeah, she was like amazing, powerful story, and just so many stories to get people there.
Yeah, and to the
back.
And to the people who showed up completely not knowing, like Katie.
Yeah.
Like those other dudes that were just on a podcast and ended up showing up. Like,
yeah, exactly. Not even sure what it was
that
really
shit is
about.
That's on a different level hardcore.
Yeah, it's a true leap of faith right there.
True leap of faith.
Or complete insanity. Or a little bit of both.
Or a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Or a little bit of both. It's you definitely need a special kind of character to be like, oh yeah, I'll go to Death Race.
Yeah, man.
It's not a marketing thing. It's not marketing. It's that hardcore.
And I have to share it, and I shared it with you prior, is like, not really knowing what it was and really thinking about the dynamics and really surrendering to that aspect of death. It really made me reflect, like the week leading up to us leaving, like the moments I spent with my son, my daughter, and my wife were like, I was really like emotional a lot of times. I didn't tell anything to my wife because she was gonna freak out, that I was actually contemplating this aspect of like holding my son and thinking, what if this was the last moment? How would I have this moment be? And just really change my perspective. It made me so incredibly present that it's like, with something like this, as soon as you sign up, it's like the race has begun, right? It's begun. Even if you don't show up, that's part of that journey, right? Because that's reflective of what's ever happened in your life. If you dropped, if you signed up and decided to do it and at the last minute got cold feet or however it was, that's part of that aspect, and that's the checking out itself. So it was really like, it made me like had a very emotional week leading up to it because there was so much of the unknown, and it's still a very real aspect, but that's our lives, right? Everything that we're doing, like walk out right now and it's like we don't know when that time comes to click that clock. It's
when
unknown.
it comes. It's only what have we done and what legacy have we left behind. We're not taking anything with us,
right? And being present in the moments, right? That's what really brought me, like, it was so ceremonial and spiritual in that regard. It really
100%.
It's so life-changing, man. I look forward to next year. So, as we're dropping right now, if I know there's already a couple people up there that we've already voluntold, like Warren. We saw him. Like, I kept seeing him there at the race, and there's a couple of other ones that are out there that, I think will make next year even more epic, because then we'll be more in that team and then, transforming ourselves and people and
100%.
and bringing it into our community and passing it on to our kids and on, man.
We're going up 4 deep.
Yeah.
In the actual truck.
And we're making it happen. All right. That's it. All right.
That's it.
That's it. It's been sold.
Boom, beautiful people.
Thank you.
Good.
Word.
Good shit, man.
Yeah, that was a good one.